What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. I don't mean to go all Napoleon Dynamite on you guys, but it's probably the best podcast we've ever done. Listen, we got National Signing Day yesterday. We got Big 12 Championship day after tomorrow, and hang on, as if this podcast weren't big enough, I'm now getting reports. Yes, there will be some movement on the SI Sooner staff. Parker, what are your sources telling you?
Oh, John, well, I guess most of the folks that keep up with us on social media know by now, but I am making the move over to 24/7 Sports on the CBS Digital Network after 9 months here at SI. So I'll be making that transition over the back half of December, and by January 1st, I will be full tilt over there. So just want to express to everybody, first off, thank you so much for your support over the 9 months that John and I have been tag teaming this deal on allsooners.com over at SI. Want to thank you all for continuing to listen to and watch our podcast, as well as read and share the articles that we churn out for you every day and every week over on All Sooners. And by the way, I don't know if he'll give me another opportunity to say it, so I just want to say it now. John Hoover is a true stallion and one of the finest men I've ever gotten the chance to work alongside and learn from. And I will sorely miss getting to do these podcasts with him every week, getting to share those press conference experiences with him, those long road trips to TCU and Lubbock and wherever else the road across the Big 12 takes us on any given day throughout the football season. So, John, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity back in March. And I assume you're pleased with your decision. I don't want to speak for you, but I think we've done some really good things here at SI over the last 9 months, and I've been pleased with where things are heading, where things have gone thus far, and I'm excited to see what the future brings.
I agree. We have done some good work. I'm a little verklempt that you mentioned me in such a positive light. I appreciate it. We're still going to be hanging out on the Zoom calls. We're still going to be at games and Big 12 Media Days and stuff like that, so it's going to be cool. I'm John Hoover, by the way. I'm in Tulsa. Parker Thune, he resides in Norman. Trust me when I say this. We are Team Parker here all the way at SI Sooners. We wish you the best. Hope it goes well over there. We appreciate you guys listening, as always, to the SI Sooners podcast. We appreciate y'all watching on my YouTube channel. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network, so check it out, allsooners.com. I want you guys to subscribe to this podcast or subscribe to my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. Okay, Parker, we got to get into the nitty-gritty here. People tuned in not for the sentimental stuff, but for the hard-hitting nuts and bolts of signing day. Parker, you have been our point man on recruiting since I hired you, what'd you say, 9 months ago, right? So yesterday, for you, after 9 months, was kind of like being in the delivery room for this class, for this Link Up 2021. Kind of like, 9 months of imagining what this class was going to look like. Yesterday, you finally got to welcome it into the world and hold it in your hands, Parker. Okay, that was stupid. But what are your first impressions of Link Up 21?
It really has been exactly 9 months, John, because you hired me on St. Patrick's Day, and here we are on December 17th, catching our breath from National Signing Day. I am exhausted from yesterday. I just threw down a cinnamon roll a couple minutes before we jumped on this podcast, so hopefully the sugar will hit me and I'll be right back to normal in 10 or 15 minutes, but I'm definitely dragging a little bit. It was a fun day, and it was really fun in particular to see Oklahoma land the one guy that was really a question mark heading into National Signing Day. They had 15 guys that they knew were going to commit, or rather that were committed, that they knew were going to sign. Savion Byrd, the offensive lineman out of Duncanville, Texas, was kind of the one whose status was up in the air. Obviously, you got Bryce Foster deciding on the 18th. You got Kamar Wheaton deciding on the 23rd. And then Tristan Lee and Jardin Gilbert deciding in January. But as far as the guys that were making their decisions on National Signing Day, Savion Byrd was really the only one that the Sooners had any question about, that there was any question as to where he was going to end up. Was it going to be Oklahoma? Was it going to be SMU? Was it maybe going to be LSU? Nobody really seemed to have a real firm grip on where Byrd was headed. Nevertheless, it seems that Caleb Williams' pitch at Sooner Summit won out, and Bird is a Sooner, making 16 signees in the class of 2021 for Oklahoma. And by many metrics, John, you're looking at a top 10 recruiting class, which you add a guy like Bryce Foster or a guy like Kamar Wheaton or a guy like Tristan Lee or any combination of those guys, you're looking at a top 5 recruiting class for the Sooners here in the 2021 cycle.
Yeah, quality over volume for sure in this class for Lincoln Riley and those guys. My thoughts on this class, I got a couple. Billy Bowman. Geez, Lincoln Riley told us yesterday he was maybe the most dynamic player in the country. Alex Grinch said he's probably going to break my heart and go play offense. Okay, I'm sold. I can't wait to watch this kid play. Clayton Smith was a dominating force his senior year in the state of Texas. Just absolutely exploded. Watching his highlights and watching his plays, kid's unbelievable. Latrell McCutcheon might be the best cornerback in Texas. Oklahoma certainly needs some good cornerback play in the coming years. Mario Williams is SI All-American's number 1 slot receiver in the country. And, of course, Caleb Williams is the number 1 overall player in the country, according to SI All-American and a lot of others. So much ability, so much potential in this class. And then, you know what? Speaking of potential, 2 guys that I want to see develop over the next 4 years. I wrote about them today, allsooners.com. I guess I wrote about him yesterday. I still got that newspaper kind of mentality in my head after 30 years in the newspaper business. Well, I wrote about him today. No, I wrote about him yesterday, but you can read about it today. Jordan Mukes from Choctaw and Nathan Rollins-Kibonge from Portland, Oregon. I asked Riley and Grinch yesterday both about these guys, you know, with their basketball background and their football upside potential, right? Their long athletic frames. These guys, they love these players. Both of them, athletically, they're just freaks. And then, you know, last, I'm not sure exactly what this says, Parker. I'll get your input on this. It's always worth noting to me that OU signed 5 players from the DMV area, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, signed 2 players from Florida, but only signed 2 from the great state of Oklahoma. Now, OU got the players they wanted, obviously, Mukes and Ethan Downs out of Weatherford. Strapping young defensive end who's going to come on. He reminds me of Austin English a little bit, just that he can. He's kind of underrated, makes a lot of plays. But Parker, Kendall Daniels went to Texas A&M. He's the number 1 player in the state, according to 24/7 Sports. And everybody's got a backstory. I know there's reasons why the coaches didn't want this kid or this kid didn't want to go to OU, but Ethan Downs was number 2. A.J. Green went to Arkansas. Aiden Kelly went to Oklahoma State. They got Mukes, but in the top 15 players in the state of Oklahoma, Parker, you've got 1 to A&M, 1 to Baylor, 1 to TCU, 4 to Oklahoma State, and 5 to Arkansas. 5. So, Parker, are Lincoln Riley and his staff recruiting Oklahoma hard enough? It's an old debate topic, but I ask you.
Well, John, I think on a year-to-year basis, you have to expect that in terms of volume within the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State is probably going to bring home the most Oklahoma kids just because they don't have the national name recognition. They don't have the brand that Lincoln Riley and the Sooners have. They need to recruit close to home in order to bring in talent that's going to be able to take Mike Gundy's program in the right direction. Oklahoma, and Lincoln Riley said this in his press conference yesterday in the aftermath of all the signings on National Signing Day. He said, we knew what guys we wanted, and if we didn't get them, we weren't going to go reaching. And so Lincoln Riley had an idea of which prospects he wanted. It just so happened that 2 of those guys were from Oklahoma. A whole bunch of them were from the DMV, 1 up in Portland and Nathan Rollins-Kibonge. And it's evidence, John, that Lincoln Riley is building a recruiting monster, I think, at the University of Oklahoma. The fact that he can go all over the place geographically and say, I want this guy, I'm going to go get him. I want this guy, I'm going to go get him, whether that's in Florida, whether that's in Washington, D.C., whether that's in Arizona. You think about him going to land Spencer Rattler from Arizona, California, Portland for Rollins-Kibonge. The thing about it is, John, is that in terms of top-end recruits, top-end football prospects, Oklahoma just doesn't have as many of them year in and year out as Texas and Florida and a lot of those other densely populated areas across the United States. And take Kendall Daniels, for example, a guy on whom there are 1,000 different opinions. I mean, 24/7 Sports regards him as the top prospect in the state of Oklahoma in the 2021 class, but Our SI All-American rankings don't even have him in the SI 1000. And so you look across the state of Oklahoma, I think there's one slam dunk guy that you can say, okay, he's going to be a stud at the next level, and that's Ethan Downs, the guy that the Sooners got. And you look at Jordan Mukes, who's 6'2", 6'4", 192 pounds, and just a freakishly long athlete with a lot of potential, a really high ceiling just because of how little football he's played. And say, okay, those guys clearly fit Lincoln Riley's vision. And the thing with Daniels, right, was that he didn't fit the vision. They actually withdrew the offer to Daniels about a week, 2 weeks before he signed with Texas A&M. So right now, it's less about geography for Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch and the rest of the Sooner staff, and it's more about the guys that they feel are ideally suited for their vision of Oklahoma football. And that isn't necessarily going to come from in-state kids. And I think when you look at Downs, I think the versatility that he brings to the table as potentially an inside linebacker, potentially an outside linebacker, a guy that can bulk up and come off the edge, or a guy that can maintain his current weight and play inside. There's a lot that you can do with a guy with that kind of body type. And it's very similar with Jordan Mukes back in the secondary. 6'4", 192, but he could bulk up. He could slide down to play linebacker, or he could be this big old roving safety on the back end of Alex Grinch's secondary. And so for me, I think it's all about what the coaching staff sees, what kind of potential they can unlock in these guys in the future. And I don't think any of these guys fit a particular mold. When you look at all the signees for Oklahoma in this class, they're all their own athlete. They're all very much their own player. And I think that's what Lincoln Riley likes. I think that's what Alex Grinch likes. I think that's what you have to like if you're a Sooner fan out there, taking a look at this class and saying, okay, there are so many guys that just bring something so unique to the table. And to me, that's what Lincoln Riley was looking for with this class. He was looking for 16 unique athletes that he and his coaching staff can mold the way that they want to. And on the whole, I would say it was a very successful National Signing Day for Oklahoma. And you'd hope that they can add a couple more signees in February to round out that recruiting class.
So the thing with this class and Oklahoma, it's an old debate, like I said. It's an old debate. Hey, are they recruiting enough Oklahoma kids? Are they letting too many Oklahoma kids go? Listen, Oklahoma's not trying to beat Oklahoma State here. Oklahoma's trying to beat Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State and all those people. So you can't compete on that level with just Oklahoma kids. You get the best ones, you get the ones you want, you get the ones that you think are going to help you, and then you go get the rest of the best around the country that fit your system. And I think that's what Lincoln Riley and those guys have done with this class of 2021. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, a little more on National Signing Day. Oh, shoot, you know what? OU plays a game on Saturday. Totally forgot. And you know what? They can win a championship. But they got to do one thing first. Tell you what that is next. Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day. And the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Follow SI Sooners on Twitter at @all_Sooners. Follow Parker at Parker Thune. I'm at John E. Hoover. Go ahead and follow Parker, even though he's leaving next month. He's going to continue to do great work covering the Sooners. So, no matter where he is, give him a follow. Our website, allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, still part of the Sports Illustrated network. Remember, for now, all of our content is free. We got no memberships. We got no subscriptions. We got no credit cards. Just click and enjoy. Find the video version of this here podcast over on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. And remember, if you could help me out here, I'd appreciate it. If you're watching us on the John Hoover Media channel, this channel is going away pretty soon. Don't know when, but all my stuff is going to be over at this channel. So please, Jump up there real quick and subscribe. We appreciate it. Okay, Parker, before we finish up with National Signing Day, we got to break down Saturday's rematch, grudge match, death match, Big 12 death match. It's OU, it's Iowa State. It's 11 a.m. Saturday. ABC, that's Channel 8 in Tulsa, Channel 5 in Oklahoma City. You guys know where to find it. I keep seeing these comments on Facebook. Who's got the game this week? What is the game on TV this week? Yes, the game is on TV this week. ABC, national television, Big 12 championship game. Parker, first of all, OU's 10-1 all time in Big 12 championship games. That's pretty damn impressive. But get this, Lincoln Riley is now 2-2 in his career against Matt Campbell, including 0-1 this year. I looked it up. Riley is 2-2 against Campbell. He's 0-2 against Chris Kleiman, and he's 32-1 against the rest of the Big 12. The question is, I guess, does Lincoln Riley have a Matt Campbell problem?
Well, clearly no much more so than he's got a Chris Kleiman problem. I mean, who would have expected that in Kleiman's first 2 years at Kansas State he was going to beat Lincoln Riley twice? Apparently, Riley can't get over the Chris Kleiman hump. But no, as far as Matt Campbell goes, you have to acknowledge that Matt Campbell is a really, really good football coach. Maybe the one in the Big 12 that can go toe-to-toe with Lincoln Riley in terms of his acumen, in terms of his ability to develop players, in terms of his ability to execute a vision with his team. And I'm not at all surprised that Campbell is one of the coaches alongside Chris Kleiman that Lincoln Riley has had trouble with. Because as good a coach as Lincoln Riley is, at some point you have to give credit to the other guy, the guy on the other sideline, right? You can say Lincoln Riley's the best coach in the Big 12. That's a fair statement. I agree with that. I would say definitively, based on what we've seen over the last 3.5 seasons, you have to say at this point, you have to assert that Lincoln Riley is the best coach in the Big 12. But there's also plenty of room for us to acknowledge, and we should acknowledge, that Matt Campbell is also a really, really good football coach with a really, really bright future. And he's not going to be at Iowa State much longer. I can guarantee you that. He is headed off to take a big job somewhere at a big program that's looking to resurrect their football team and achieve a level of fame that they haven't had in years or decades. I'm looking at you, Michigan, perhaps. Texas, very well, I believe, as well, could be in the running for Matt Campbell. And there are plenty of other programs across the nation that would love to have a guy like that at the helm of their program. But as far as it pertains to this game on Saturday, what you're looking at is you are looking at, in my mind, the two guys that are far and away the top coaches in the Big 12 going toe-to-toe. And we know about Matt Campbell's familiarity with Alex Grinch. Obviously, he's seen Lincoln Riley each of the last 4 seasons and been able to beat him in 2 of those contests. You're looking at a really evenly matched game from a coaching standpoint, I think, because the reality is at a program like Iowa State, you've got to have good coaching to be in this position because you're not going to recruit elite talent, right? We were just talking about recruiting at the end of last segment, John, talking about the fact that Oklahoma's trying to beat the blue blood programs in college football by recruiting from California and Texas and Florida and Washington, D.C. and what have you. Iowa State's never going to be on that level. Let's just call it like it is. Iowa State is going to be a school, going to continue to be a school that has to recruit mostly local Midwestern kids and develop them and have a fundamentally sound team with a lot of chemistry that plays 11-man football on every down in order to have success. I think the fact that Iowa State is in this position at all right now is a testament to the job that Matt Campbell and the coaching staff have done over the course of his 5-year tenure in Ames. Oklahoma is far more talented at every position on the, I shouldn't say every position on the field because Breece Hall is really good, Charlie Cole is really good, Jaquan Bailey's really good. But for the most part, Oklahoma across the board is a more talented football team than Iowa State. The reason that Iowa State is in this position, the reason that they're the number 6 team in college football, the reason that they are very well in the mix for a college football playoff spot should they win this contest is because Matt Campbell has done a fantastic job as head coach of that team. And that's what we got to acknowledge heading into this Big 12 championship game is that Matt Campbell is the X factor. And he's already proven this season that he doesn't need to run out an entire team of 4- and 5-star recruits in order to topple Lincoln Riley and the Oklahoma Sooners. Can he do it again? Another thing here, John, No team has ever beaten Oklahoma twice in the same season. In the long and storied history of Oklahoma football, it's never happened. Matt Campbell could be the first guy to do it. That would be quite the feather in his cap, I would imagine.
That would be something. Iowa State hasn't won an outright conference championship ever in its history. It has two conference championships shared in its history. 1912 was the last one. 1911 was the first one. So over 100 years, okay? They finished a college football season in the top 25 twice. They're going to finish, obviously, this year in the top 25. So historically, this is as big a mismatch. This is the biggest mismatch, historically speaking. You know, what a program is over here versus what a program is over here. This is the biggest mismatch in the history of conference championship games, which have been going since 1992. So, OU, like you said, I agree. They've got more talent in this game. They should win this game. They're favored by 5.5, depending on the line you follow. It's a neutral site, championship game. You know, both teams are at full strength, I think, for the most part. Fingers crossed. Oklahoma should win this game. But I asked Lincoln earlier in the week about Iowa State's talent, and not just the coaching and the blue blood, or not the blue blood, the blue collar. OU's the blue blood, Iowa State the blue collar. I just love the way Lincoln Riley phrased it, man. He said this isn't some Rudy story. These guys are good. He's right. They've got 4 guys on this defense who are probably a lock, in my opinion, for first-team All-Big 12. They've got, for sure, 2 guys on offense who are a lock. 2. Breece Hall is one of them, obviously. They're probably going to have the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year in Breece Hall. He leads the nation in rushing yards. They're probably going to have the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year in Jaquan Bailey, the defensive end, second in the conference in sacks. Then you throw in the Matt Campbell factor. I mean, he's poised. He gets his guys to play fundamental. He gets his guys to play, at a higher level than what their recruiting rankings say they should. Yeah, sure, they're talented, Parker, but I looked at the recruiting rankings of the last 5 Oklahoma classes and the last 5 Iowa State classes. Iowa State's national team rankings under Campbell, the last 5 classes were 55, 52, 55, 46, and 46. That ain't good. At Oklahoma, the national recruiting rankings of those same classes, 19, 8, 9, 6, and 12. That's per 24/7 Sports. That is a blowout waiting to happen. That is a complete mismatch. But yet, you factor in the Matt Campbell factor, how he gets his guys to play better than they are, how he plays fundamental and coach, and he's poised and all that. Iowa State has had 0 5-stars in that group that I'm referring to the last 5 years. 0 5-star recruits. And they've had just 4 4-star recruits. You want to know what OU's had? OU in that same time has had 5 5-stars and 66 4-stars. 4-star recruits, 66-4. Again, this should be a mismatch on paper, but it's not because of the Matt Campbell factor. You know what else I looked up today, by the way? After his first season, when they went 3-9, you know what Matt Campbell's record is at Iowa State, Parker? It's 31-18. You know who else is 31-18 in the last 4 years?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Tom Herman. They're ready to build a statue to one guy for going 31-18, and they're trying like hell to run the other guy out of town for going 31-18. Just some perspective for you. Okay, Parker, speaking of recruiting, we got to get back on this. Alex Grinch yesterday sounded like he really, really liked his new defensive backs. What are their prospects of the DBs that they recruited for 2021, playing and contributing in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, well, you got to start with Latrell McCutcheon because our SI All-American rankings love McCutcheon. I've talked to John Garcia Jr., our director of recruiting at SI, extensively about McCutcheon because he's ranked so much higher, number 72 overall in the SI 99, than any other recruiting service. And McCutcheon is intriguing because he missed his entire junior season because of a torn ACL. So Garcia's projections are based mostly on McCutcheon's performance as an underclassman, and they really are projections of where McCutcheon could end up. He believes that the guy has a really high ceiling, and you look at him play the cornerback position. He's come back very strong as a senior from that injury, And it lends some optimism that maybe he could be ready to play cornerback for Oklahoma as early as next year. And he's not going to be rushed into action with how deep the Oklahoma secondary is. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if McCutcheon, similar to what you've seen from DJ Graham and Josh Eaton this year, if he earns some snaps here and there next year as a true freshman. Now, Damon Harmon is a guy that I love. And he has been one of the fastest rising prospects in the entire country over the last year and a half. His coverage skills are off the charts. He's long, he's athletic, he knows how to use his hands. He's just tremendously refined as a defensive back. And he's a great run defender, too, which is kind of a lost art amongst defensive backs. I tell you what, I look at Delarian Turner-Yell as one of those guys for Oklahoma, a guy who's not afraid to come downhill and defend the run. I see a lot of the same traits in Damon Harmon. I'm really excited to see what he can do in Alex Grinch's secondary. So you got McCutcheon, you got Harmon. We already talked about Jordan Mukes. And then you've referenced it, John. There's very much a chance that Billy Bowman sees action in the secondary, too. Now, I believe he's going to play offense if I had to place bets, just because one of the reasons, I should say, that he decommitted from Texas was because Texas wanted him to play only defensive back. And so I think with that in mind, Bowman's probably looking to get some snaps on the offensive side of the football. But hey, we saw Trajan Bridges play both sides of the ball in 2019, and we could see something very similar with Bowman, especially if he is, as Lincoln Riley said, the most dynamic athlete in the country in this class.
Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, we got more football, history in the NFL, and a little bit of basketball.
Hey there, loyal listeners. Parker Thune here with SI Sooners. Are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're just a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day. And the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonerssi@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter at @all_Sooners.
Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. Last week, Parker, OU became I think the first school in the modern era, first school since 1970, since the merger. I can't remember what the qualifier is, to have 3 starting quarterbacks on the same Sunday or the same weekend in the NFL. And you know what? All 3 guys really stood out, I think. Baker, Kyler, and Jalen. All 3 should have won their games if the Browns could play just a little defense on Monday Night Football. Those guys would have been 3-0 last week. First of all, wow, what a damn game. I know when I was watching it that I was saying this is the best NFL game I've seen in a long time. And, at the end of the game they said, Steve Levy and those guys, okay, NFL game of the year. Couldn't agree more. Probably as good an NFL game since, the Rams. Remember the Rams Super Bowl year when they beat the Chiefs like 50-48 or whatever that was? That was entertaining. And I thought the ending the other night justified the means, so to speak. But Kyler Murray, whooped up on the Giants. Jalen Hurts made his first NFL start. All he does was go to New Orleans and beat the best team in the NFC. And then this week, guess what? We got Jalen versus Kyler. Parker, you think Lincoln Riley is having fun right now, both watching these guys in the NFL and in recruiting for future OU quarterbacks?
John, here's what's most incredible about the statistic that you just referenced, the fact that Oklahoma is the first school since the merger to have 3 starting quarterbacks in the NFL at the same time, in the same week. All 3 of those guys were playing college football 3 years ago today. That's how quickly Lincoln Riley has developed those guys, given them NFL prospects, and bred players that can be NFL starting quarterbacks. And we knew we were going to see it from Baker Mayfield. Kyler Murray was a bit of a question mark as quickly as he seemed to wash out at Texas A&M. He was really looking for a fresh start when he came to Oklahoma, and he got that, and he exploded and ultimately won the Heisman Trophy in Lincoln Riley's system. And then Jalen Hurts was potentially even more of a question mark than Murray because he'd proven that he was productive, But when he came to Oklahoma, I don't think anybody looked at that guy and said, yeah, he's going to be an NFL starting quarterback one day. Even after his phenomenal season last year at the helm of the Oklahoma offense, John, I'll admit I was right there saying I don't think Jalen Hurts is an NFL starting quarterback, at least not immediately. He's got a lot of development that he needs to achieve before he's ready to produce and play on that level. But lo and behold, Carson Wentz starts to scuffle, and you see the maturity in Jalen Hurts shine through. And in his first NFL start, John, he knocked off the best team in the NFC and rushed for 100-plus yards. What Lincoln Riley has been able to do with quarterbacks at the University of Oklahoma in the course of not even 4 full seasons at the helm is nothing short of amazing, John.
It's unreal.
I don't know that there's any coach in college football that a quarterback prospect would rather play for than Lincoln Riley. And we heard as much from Caleb Williams, right? Caleb Williams, even after Brock Vandagriff committed to Oklahoma upwards of a year ago, Caleb Williams was still in conversations with Lincoln Riley saying, I'm willing to walk on at Oklahoma. I'm willing to come to Oklahoma, walk on, and compete with Brock Vandagriff for the starting job at Oklahoma. That's how much of an influence Lincoln Riley has. That's how big of a name he is among the top quarterback prospects in the country. That's how highly regarded he is among guys that are looking to take their talents and take their arm to the collegiate level. The fact that the number 1 quarterback in the 2021 class, John, by a long shot too, and I've gone on and on about Caleb Williams, but the fact that Caleb Williams, when he could have picked up the phone, called any college coach in the country, said, I want to come play for you, and they would have made a way for it to happen. The fact that he was willing to set all of that aside and walk on without a scholarship at the University of Oklahoma and compete with Brock Vandagriff for the starting job. That tells you all you need to know about Lincoln Riley's reputation as a quarterback whisperer. And that's what he is, John. He is the quarterback whisperer in college football. And you don't need to look any further than the 3 guys that he has put in the NFL over the last 3 seasons, all of whom are now starting on potential NFL playoff teams.
Yeah. Man, Parker, it's unbelievable. You're right. When you put it into broad perspective, I want you to think about this. The knock on Lincoln Riley was he can only, he does that with other people's quarterbacks, right? Transfer quarterbacks. Number 1, he's recruited the number 1 quarterback in the country the last 2 years, okay? So there's something to that, right? The other thing is, if you had asked me after each one of their freshman years, okay, Kyler at Texas Tech, Baker at Texas Tech, Kyler at Texas A&M, and Jalen at Alabama. If you had asked me maybe when they were being recruited, okay, Baker was a walk-on. Kyler was the best player in the history of Texas, right? But he was only 5'9", 5-ish, 5'9"-ish, 5'10". And Jalen was this great and wonderful leader, but he was kind of a one-dimensional quarterback going to Alabama, right? Bringing Alabama something that they'd never had before, someone who could run the read option. If you had asked me, hey, you think those guys will be starting in the NFL quarterback as rookies? I'd have said, you're freaking crazy. There's no way Baker Mayfield at Texas Tech or at a high school, or Kyler Murray at Texas A&M or at a high school, 5'9", are you kidding me? Or Jalen Hurts coming out of Houston in high school or freshman year at Alabama. There's no way that kid is an NFL quarterback. The definition of NFL quarterback has changed dramatically. And you know who's changing it? Lincoln Riley. It's unbelievable. He is taking guys that didn't succeed at their previous universities or didn't succeed enough. Baker didn't have a scholarship. Kyler was terribly unhappy and very mismanaged in that 3-headed quarterback system they had at A&M. And then Jalen, for all his gifts at Alabama, all the talent around him, all the offensive linemen, the receivers, the running backs, the defenses, when the opportunity came to play for Lincoln Riley, he got the heck out of there because he had lost his job to Tua, right? So to think what Lincoln has done with quarterbacks and putting guys in the NFL, the next level guys, it's unthinkable. It's never happened before. No, not one guy has had some quarterbacks. You see some quarterbacks come through NC State or Miami or various schools around the country, and they claim quarterback U. OU's doing it every year. OU's putting a new guy in the NFL as a starter every year, and it's like, it's mind-blowing. Now, next year they're not, of course, because Rattler's a redshirt freshman, but, look to the future, young man, is all I got to say about that. I want you to think about something else for a second, too. All of Barry Switzer's wishbone quarterbacks at Oklahoma, all of them. He never had a quarterback rush for 1,000 yards as a head coach. Jack Mildren did it when Switzer was offensive coordinator for Chuck Fairbanks. But as a head coach, not Steve Davis, not Thomas Lott, not Danny Bradley, not Jamel Holloway, not Charles Thompson. None of those guys rushed for 1,000 yards in the wishbone, running the ball 85, 90% of the time, 95% of the time sometimes. They never had a 1,000-yard quarterback. Under Lincoln Riley, Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts both did it in back-to-back years. Mr. Air Raid, right? Mr. Air Raid, who throws the ball 100 times a game. Yeah, no. The perceptions on Lincoln Riley have changed. It's unbelievable that some of the things that he's done just in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Anyway, it's going to be fun to watch those guys go at it this week. Parker, before we get into hoops, I want to finish off the Big 12 championship game. You and I are both going to be there. We're both going to be writing and posting videos for allsooners.com. I think OU's going to win the game, Parker. I think the Sooners take care of the football and tackle Breece Hall just once in a while. I think it's a win. I do think it's two really good teams, but I think OU's depth and talent and experience in the championship game setting, I think that matters, and I think that makes a difference here. I know Lincoln can't wait to see what a difference that Ronnie Perkins and Ramondre Stevenson make against Iowa State. He didn't have them the last time, and they ended up losing the game by 7 points. I think those guys put OU on another level competitively, and by that I mean they're not just the best team in the Big 12. I think those guys on the field when they're playing well, which they have since they've been back, I think those guys put OU in a much more elite tier talent-wise. Parker, who wins on Sunday and why?
I'm uneasy about this one, John. I am, but I like Oklahoma simply because they've been here before. They've got Perkins and Stevenson back, which, as you mentioned, they didn't have them in Ames. And I think if Oklahoma, as long as they can make Iowa State one-dimensional on offense, as long as they can lock down Breece Hall, as long as that strong Sooners front four can get the push up front, keep Hall from bouncing outside and picking up chunk gains. If they have to put the ball in the game in the hands of Brock Purdy, I think Oklahoma's in a really, really good spot. And offensively, one thing to keep in mind here, John, you mentioned Lincoln Riley as the air raid guy, which is very much the perception of him for whatever reason. Lincoln Riley's offenses in his time at Oklahoma lean towards the run more so than the pass. Oklahoma runs more than they pass. And I think that's going to be the recipe for success for them on Saturday. If they can get Ramondre Stevenson the ball 25 times, and if Spencer Rattler doesn't have to throw the ball any more than 30 times, I think the balance on offense and the ability to control the pace and the tempo of the game are going to elevate Oklahoma to a victory in their 6th consecutive Big 12 championship.
I agree. I agree with all those points, especially the Ramondre and Rattler kind of ratio of plays. If you can keep one under 30 and get the other one around 30, I think that's a winning formula for OU. Let's finish up with some basketball. OU beat ORU 79-65 Wednesday night. ORU looks solid to me. They look like a solid mid-major. They can shoot, they can score, they can get up and down the floor, but I think their talent is pretty obvious for that level. Okay, they're not just a slouch. They're better than they have been at that program, which is about 6 miles away from my house. But OU kind of handled them kind of methodically, I thought, pulled away, built a big lead, chip away, built back the big lead. So it was a nice game for OU. First of all, I thought OU got the thing that I leave yesterday's game with was the defensive boost that OU got from the addition of Elijah Harkless. Truly, we have no idea what his holdup was, or even if there was a holdup, thanks NCAA, right? But he missed the first 4 games after transferring from Cal State Northridge as a transfer. You're sitting out, you're redshirting, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the NCAA says, you know what? We got too many of these transfer waivers to review. We don't have enough resources. We don't have enough staff. We can't look at them all in a timely manner, in a manner that's fair to student athletes and the team. So we're just going to issue a blanket waiver, and poof, just like that, everyone's eligible, right? So Harkless, who had been practicing, since he transferred in, kid finally gets on the floor, and I'm telling you, Parker, he's a defensive ace. His, I think, first 4 or 5 possessions, he comes in, he slaps the ball off an ORU player out of bounds, gets the turnover. He closes out on a 3, and the shooter ends up hitting the side of the backboard. He rotates over onto someone else's man, forces a pass, and then he boxes out that guy and gets a defensive rebound, and then he dives on the floor for a loose ball. I'm not saying OU's defense wasn't any good before. I think they're okay. And I'm not saying, listen, Xavier wouldn't have rained down hellfire from the skies anyway. They probably would have. But what I am saying is the team that I watched play defense in Cincinnati the other night versus the team that I watched play defense in Norman last night looked quite a bit different with Harkless on the floor. Defense, if you think about it, was his calling card at Northridge, and I think he brings in kind of a defensive attitude, kind of that toughness, Parker. What did you see out of the games that you've covered this past week?
Well, I think what stood out to me last night, John, I'm talking about the other transfer, Umoja Gibson, who came to Norman via North Texas and had all of his 14 points last night in the first half. Hit 4 of 7 3-point attempts. At one point went on an 8-0 run all by himself. And he's a guy that, when he's hot, is as good a shooter as Oklahoma has, save for Brady Manick, who has NBA potential. Let's call it like it is. That guy could play in the league one day. But outside of Manick, the Sooners really didn't have an elite outside shooter. Gibson can be that guy for them, and that's exciting for me to see in terms of where this team is headed, because obviously Harkless is a huge addition on the defensive side of the ball. Davion Harmon has been much improved. Austin Reeves is just a pure scorer, and Kirk Queth has seen a dramatic uptick in minutes from last season, and he's doing a lot with those minutes. And so where he's headed, I think, has got to be a big encouragement to Lon Kruger and his staff. But Gibson is going to be crucial for Oklahoma down the stretch, and that's because of that perimeter shooting ability that he provides. Because Manick isn't going to be able to get you 25 a night. It would be nice if he could, but as big, as athletic, and as good a shooter as he is, he's going to be the guy that opposing defenses key on, the guy that they're going to look to shut down. And when that happens, you need to be able to turn to somebody else and be able to get production from behind the arc in today's game. The Sooners really didn't have that last year, and that's one of the areas in which they came up short. That's one of the things that cost them in Big 12 play, is not having a shooter outside of Manick. They've got one now in Gibson, and with that in mind, I think you really got to look out for this Oklahoma team as one that could potentially go toe-to-toe with just about anybody anybody in the Big 12 if they're on their game on any particular night.
I just hope Manick doesn't cut his hair all season. I like the way the locks flow as he runs down the court. OU versus Houston Baptist on Saturday afternoon. Here's the deal. Texas Tech, West Virginia, Baylor, and Kansas after that. I like the way this OU team is going. I do. I like what I've seen from Lon Kruger's bunch. I think they're starting to come together a little bit. But that group that I just read from, that schedule, guys, I'm predicting an 0-4 start. I shouldn't say an 0-4 start, an 0-4 week, couple of weeks over the next 2 weeks that in Big 12 play, man. I got nothing against OU, but I can't think of a more difficult start to the season than those 4 teams. Listen to the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can always tell your Amazon-enabled device, Alexa, please play the SI Sooners podcast, or go to allsooners.com, click on the player, and listen on your phone, your tablet, your computer, and you can always watch the YouTube version of this podcast, John Hoover Media, on YouTube. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.